"You did? You've got to come and be our prisoner at once," said the constable. "We arrest ye on the charge of not biding in Casterbridge jail in a decent proper manner to be hung tomorrow morning. Neighbors, do your duty, and seize the culprit." On hearing the charge, the man seemed enlightened, and, saying not another word, resigned himself with preternatural civility to the search party, who, with their staves in their hands, surrounded him on all sides, and marched him back towards the shepherd's cottage. It was 11 o'clock by the time they arrived. The light shining from the open door, a sound of men's voices within, proclaimed to them as they approached the house that some new events had arisen in their absence. On entering, they discovered the shepherd's living room to be invaded by 2 officers from Casterbridge jail, and a well-known magistrate who lived at the nearest country seat. Intelligence of the escape having become generally circulated. "Gentlemen," said the constable, "I have brought back your man not without risk and danger. But everyone must do his duty. He is inside this circle of able-bodied persons, who have lent me useful aid, considering their ignorance of crown work. Men, bring forward your prisoner." And the third stranger was led to the light. "Who is this?" said one of the officials. "The man," said the constable. "Certainly not," said the turnkey, and the first corroborated his statement. "But how can it be otherwise?" asked the constable. "Or why was he so terrified at sight of the singing instrument of the law who sat there?" Here he related the strange behavior of the third stranger on entering the house during the hangman's song. "Can't understand it," said the officer coolly. "All I know is that it is not the condemned man. He's quite a different character from this one. A gauntish fellow, with dark hair and eyes. Rather good looking, and with a musical bass voice that if you heard it once you'd never mistake as long as you lived. Why, souls, 'twas the man in the chimney corner." "Hey, what?" said the magistrate, coming forward after inquiring particulars from the shepherd in the background. "Haven't you got the man after all?" "Well, sir," said the constable, "he's the man we were in search of, that's true, and yet he's not the man we were in search of. For the man we were in search of was not the man we wanted, sir. If you understand my everyday way, for 'twas the man in the chimney corner." "A pretty kettle of fish altogether," said the magistrate. "You had better start for the other man at once." The prisoner now spoke for the first time. The mention of the man in the chimney corner seemed to have moved him as nothing else could do. "Sir," he said, stepping forward to the magistrate, "take no more trouble about me. The time is come when I may as well speak. I have done nothing. My crime is that the condemned man is my brother. Early this afternoon I left home at Shottsford to tramp it all the way to Casterbridge jail to bid him farewell. I was benighted, and called here to rest and ask the way. When I opened the door I saw before me the very man, my brother, that I thought to see in the condemned cell at Casterbridge. He was in this chimney corner, and jammed close to him. So that he could not have got out if he had tried, was the executioner who'd come to take his life, singing a song about it and not knowing that it was his victim who was close by, joining in to save appearances. My brother looked a glance of agony at me, and I knew he meant, 'Don't reveal what you see, my life depends on it.' I was so terror-struck that I could hardly stand. And, not knowing what I did, I turned and hurried away.